Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Sunday, March 13th. I'm just editing my video from yesterday. I was going to put this voiceover at the end, like I took a nap and I woke up and this thing came to me. You know, when things come to you, either from inside you or through you, or some whatever, some sort of channeling like communication. It happens to be quite often when I do these videos because it's just part of the Mark system to plug into the Ethernet. And so, this idea was there, and I thought it was profound enough to put it in the video for tomorrow, Monday, March 16th, which won't be up till probably Tuesday or Wednesday. And so hopefully I can find this comment, because this isn't about Trump, but it's a phenomenon that Trump's a part of. One of my viewers, that's not the comment. Here it is, maybe. So my family members' responses, this is a comment. My family members' responses to dumb faking the assassination attempt. If it's fake, it's necessary because he's going to save the world. And when Trump said that thing about being able to shoot anybody in the face, or someone in the face on March 5th, on the face in at Fifth Avenue in New York City, and not losing any supporters. And so, if you understand Trump as a person, he grew up as a millionaire son in New York City. In the rich, part of the wealthy people in New York City, right? These people, and went to, Wharton University, wherever it is. These types of people hobnobbing with those types of people who are movers and shakers, part of an elite. He's an elite person. He took over his dad's business, and $16 million in investment he got from them, and that's the kind of person he was. This is a different experience than you. And he grew up as mostly a liberal Democrat, crap, hobnobbing with the Clintons and those people, and then all the celebrity elite people that people in the truth community, the right people, don't like. Not only politicians, but actors, liberal actors, these people. He was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. And so he had no experience, no real shared experience with the kind of people that make up the right wing of the Trumpers, the MAGA people. These MAGA people, for the most part, some of them are well off, some of them are rich people, some of them are successful businessmen, but most of them aren't. And most of them didn't watch the show The Apprentice, because it was not, it was a New York liberal show on NBC network with a lot of liberal celebrities and these things, and it wasn't anything to do with their belief system. So you wonder how he cast a spell on them. And this is not exclusive to Trump, because what you have is that inside all these people, there is a desperate need for somebody to save a country that they see deteriorating, right? There is something inside of them, an archetype, a vision, an idea of a person, a savior. This is also the Christian part of Trump's. These people who grew up as Christians, they have the savior complex, and he's able to tap into that. They're looking for something. They believe that there is a person out there that could come as an outsider, their understanding of politics in Washington, D.C., and that there's a person like Trump who could come in as an outsider and change all that. And, they see that. There's a part of that. There's something in there, like this storyline. And it's a very powerful one based in their religion, with, to do with Jesus and these things. And it's been cemented in there by the chosen one, the chosen one in these storylines that you see over and over again. Some orphan, that's over there, that's, Luke Skywalker and Harry Potter, and, these various narrations that have been there. The hero, the Clint Eastwood, the guy who breaks the rules, and by breaking the rules, this is what Jen Psaki and Jon Stewart were talking about. I covered that in the video today. It was Jon Stewart talking about this, that Trump is saying that everything's corrupt, and he's going to be the most corrupt of the corrupt, and he's going to use the corruption and the scumbaggery in a direction that's favorable for America, and he'll be the king bully and these things with tariffs. So these archetypes that exist, and people who don't really understand Washington, D.C., politics, the world in general, have these ideas of something that could happen, and they're just waiting for somebody. You know, like if you talk to a crazy person and you find out what their idea is, and you run with it, like they're so excited that someone's finally listening to them. Somebody is verbalizing what they have inside of them, and even though Trump is nothing like these people, he's able to verbalize this, this inner belief that they have, this inner, archetype, this scenario, and he's able to verbalize what they feel and think about all kinds of things, right? And so when he's able to do this and plug into that, they are like, this is the guy, because it's like they've had a prophecy. It's even like you've told your whole life there's a prophecy that this guy is going to come, and when he comes, you got to follow him. And it's like you're told your life it's happening. It's it's a part of your whole belief system. And so this is like the second coming of Jesus or some shit for them. And so they're willing to lay down their lives or whatever it might be. It's also something where, just because of maybe the need for Trump to take down America or whatever it might be, that divinity has programmed these people. Like they come with this predisposition so that when Trump shows up in front of them and then gives them this, says these things, it clicks something in them like it's like a virus, and they just, they're bound to him in some zombified way. If this is not unique, this has happened over and over again with leaders around the world. People grow in desperation, or the leader says the things that they've been hoping for or dreaming about. And so oftentimes these people are almost like aliens that don't understand humans, but then they understand, the nature of human psyche, and they were able to click into these things. And since they don't feel anything and they have no morals and no moral compass, they'll say anything. They know that people want to hear, of course, they don't believe it themselves. And they plug into this, and they just, follow the lead. There's a movie called The Man That Would Be King, and Sean Connery and Michael Caine are lost explorers. Maybe they've something, I don't remember what their situation was. But they come upon these villagers, these people, and they recognize Sean Connery as a professorial person, and they make him king. And as I remember it, it's been a long time since I saw that, but it is like a great movie. And, Michael Caine knows this guy's full of shit, and Sean Connery totally embraces the role and starts believing like he's a god. It's not like he's just a king, it's like he's a god. And this happens to people. And it happens to spiritual people who have some spiritual capital, and other people recognize it, and then they get desperate and they start worshiping the person, and the person loses sight of what their spiritual, that they're the ones following God, and they start thinking of themselves as God, and then they're fucked and their people are fucked, and you've seen this play out over and over again. But, there's just these things inside people that, it might happen just on a one-to-one basis. If somebody can figure out, what somebody wants from a romantic partner. Like people have a dream woman, a dream man inside them, right? Like it's the ideal person. And what they're, attracted to, what they're, whatever it is. I saw this movie I think it's called Thief of Hearts. It's not a very good movie. Like a B movie. But this guy breaks into this house or apartment or whatever. And, rich people. And he steals this woman's diary. He starts reading it, and the woman's married, but he figures out, she's writing all these things that her husband's not giving her. And he goes and acts, and as a thief, he does all these things, right, for her. Like she has a dream of being on like a sailboat in some romantic situation. And he just, and he takes this inner world that he has access to, her diary, and then uses that to, figure out what he needs to win her over. But people who get conned and get, taken advantage of, it's for this reason. People have something inside of them, a weakness, a belief, something that they desperately want somebody to become that for them. And whatever that is, normal people have their own lives, and they're not going to do something as immoral and as fucked up as that, right? As, not believing in something and just becoming and acting and faking something to take advantage of somebody else. Like most people just don't have that in them, and so they won't do it. So your marital partner and these other people won't do that. Even maybe they might do it for to benefit you. Like if you need something, they'll try to give it to you. They'll try to be that for you, just for your own benefits. Occasionally you get something like that, but somebody doing it out of the goodness of their heart. But the people who will do it are sociopathic people who will do, act, and say anything to achieve their goal. And when they see that if they give people something, that they can feed off that energy and utilize those people, monetize those people and weaponize those people to do their bidding for them. That's what's happening with Trump, right? And then, the anti-Trump movement and what Joe Biden became the anti-Trump guy. And see, all of a sudden, some guy who's been around forever that nobody liked and respected and thought was presidential, they're now talking about him being a great president because he represented, a need that the desperate liberals had of getting rid of Trump, someone who could beat Trump. And, even though Trump and him are the exact same guy. Like the people hate Biden and the people hate Trump, but love the other guy, right? Because they're almost like identical in personality and they're the same age and they're just very similar. They're a little bit different because Trump's a businessman and Biden's a politician, but they both have the same sort of character quality issues with, their relationship to women and some of these other things and groping women, these things. They both do the same thing. And they have a lot of the same characteristics. And neither one of them believes in the bullshit that they're saying. It's just stuff that they've learned to say to win people over. Joe Biden has this whole thing, I'm from Delaware and Pennsylvania, and I've come from a hardworking, no malarkey family, and this is what my dad said, and my word is a Biden, and all that bullshit that he said. He didn't believe any of that stuff. He would sell all that stuff out for, the stuff he sold it out for. And Trump the same way. They don't believe in those things. But you do, and that's all that matters. And it's just a matter of like how desperate people are and what the consciousnesses of people. And people on the right are fairly desperate, are the liberals, because they all see the system coming to the end, and they sense it, and they're hoping that somebody would come and, most people are like, oh wow, our civilization's going to collapse, and they're completely freaked out by it. But then they're like, well, maybe I can do something about it. Maybe there's some savior out there. And then someone says, yeah, I can save the system. And you're like, oh my God, thanks, Elon, And so, like, that's all it takes because no one wants to hear that shit. They don't want to deal with the truth and the reality of their situation. They want to be, that's why people take painkillers and get on drugs and things because they don't want to face the Matrix the way it is. That's why in the Matrix movie, the guy was like, the Cypher character says, give me the blue pill. I want to go back into the Matrix. Like, I want to forget the reality of my situation because it's too fucking painful. And so, facing the truth, facing reality, Reality at Dawn is the title of a book in the Sajmark system, like sort of I don't want to call it the Bible, but one of the most important books. It's about these things, right? It's about, Reality at Dawn is facing truth in its most pristine form, which is almost impossible for people because they want to believe that they and their lives and everything else are about something else. And not about like serving God and not about giving up the freedom to choose the wrong thing and whatever it might be. Anyways, I just thought I would begin the video like this. Let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, so I'm going to add this. This is a message from the Whispers of the Brighter World, these channeled messages from this French woman from the Sajmark system. Saturday, July 28th, 2001, 8 a.m. Humans are moving with blindfolds on their eyes. For some of them, the blindfold is raised at times, thus enabling them to enlighten their fellow men. Life on Earth has reached a stage where solutions must be found so that human beings can be transformed in every respect. Humanity has fallen prey to negative forces that cannot entirely be counterbalanced by the best aspects. The plague of the world is persistent. Our efforts to transform it bear fruit. But evolution is slow and will have to pass through other factors in accordance with our action. You all belong to this plan in more ways than one. being an aspirant to higher spirituality, you are positive elements. The harvest, which is currently being prepared in the world, creates a hope for the future. This resilient, productive crop will expand in a satisfactory way. Every chance will be given to humanity to face up to things and develop under the best auspices. May the new world see the light of day, generated by beings having reached higher levels of consciousness. Babaji, he's the second master of the Sajmark system. And so, I thought I'd put this here. It'll be a part of the Journey series as well. But there's this, this is the idea behind the spiritual movement that I have been, the meditation that I do for a number of years. That, things have to change, which is obvious, I think, to most people. And there's a plan in place to elevate people to a higher level where we won't do all the bullshit we're doing to destroy the world now, because we just won't, right? We won't have any desire to do so. But that's not going to come easily. People aren't going to just do that on their own. They're going to need motivation, which is going to be difficult circumstances on planet Earth. The planet will be close to uninhabitable based on our bad decisions, and everyone will fucking know it, and we'll have the need to redeem humanity. Okay, so today's Monday, March 17th. There was one more Whispers I was going to read from yesterday. I went through them. There's about 10 of them I didn't read. There's a thing called a Whisper a day. And there's 20,000 or so of these messages, the most channeled messages of any kind and any... the stuff in the New Testament is... a lot of it's channeled. It's stuff that was given to the disciples after Jesus died, right? Things that they were inspired by in connection to Jesus, whatever it was. So there's these, history of channeled material in every religion, like in every spiritual movement. In the Sajmark movement, this guy Babaji was really uneducated in the classical term. He got everything through internal inspiration and connecting with higher developed souls. And he wrote 5 books that were basically just him acting as a conduit for the information to flow through. And it's what I do here to some extent, especially when I'm talking about the spiritual stuff. And pretty much every work, most great literary works and great creative ideas and many of the inventions people have, there's some level of connection to something beyond your earthly existence, connecting on the spiritual world to something that inspires you, that you're given this, idea and things like this. And, people who have, even like joking around and things, there's a flow of information that descends into you from a higher place, hopefully. It could be a lower place, but hopefully from a higher place. But anyways, let's get to this last message. Here it is. Tuesday, December 16th, 2003, 8 a.m. Life is change, and it is advisable to adapt to situations, which is something humans don't easily do. They keep searching throughout their existence for a solid anchor in all manifestations of their life, but that is infeasible. Fundamentally, they seek a stability that does not resist indefinitely the vagaries of time. We will come back once again to the fact that equilibrium is acquired through the knowledge of their true nature, which is immutable and in compliance with the divine laws from which they can't escape. So let me explain that one. We'll come back to, once again, the fact that the equilibrium is acquired through the knowledge of their true nature, which is immutable, in compliance with the divine laws from which they can't escape. They believe that they are masters of their own life, yet they only obey orders, subjected to rules completely beyond themselves. And so this is the idea that you connect with your soul, and you're on your soul's path. That's the only way you have any sort of equilibrium. Some sort of feeling like you're doing the right thing. And most people have, they have nightmares, or they can't sleep, or there's some situation where they're feeling like they, I used to feel like this, where you're missing something. there's something wrong. Why, I'm not living the life I should be living. There's something essentially I'm missing. Like what's missing from my life that's, it's like something that when it's like you're going in the wrong direction. You kind of know you're going in the wrong direction, but you don't turn around and you keep on going in the wrong direction. And, you have all these signs, you have all these things that are happening in your life saying turn around, and you just don't. You keep on going in the wrong direction. And that's what the people who control the system, the other people, who are not, some people are doing what they're supposed to do in a villainous role. And I'll get into that. I think I have a comment to get to about that. But here, when they open up to the knowledge of laws governing the world in relation to relation to and dependent on higher forces, their vision of things changes, and they comply more readily with the vagaries of their earthly existence. They become aware that it is a formative stage, and that each one of their incarnations is an opportunity to progress. I don't know why I turned into a British person. I also got a British accent there for progress. That's how they pronounce it, I believe. This being achieved, their objectives can then take shape with a more general framework centered on their evolution. The light dawns on them. Henceforth, they know their priorities and act accordingly. Even if all of their attempts are not crowned with success, they progress in the right direction. They will better accept the blows dealt by fate, understanding the meaning that previously escaped them, and they progress in their quest, keeping their objectives in mind. Wisdom is more or less innate, but until the end, humans are put to the test of endurance, making them progress only along this path. For the soul having reached this stage, there is every hope of success. Babaji. So if people want to read these things, you search a whisper a day. It's a whisper from the brighter world, and they have one of these messages per day. They just drop randomly. They're not in sequential order, and some are some are just talking to the medium herself who has a lot of doubts and a lot of health issues, and some are about spirituality, and some are professorial, like I've read the professorial ones recently. But anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, so this is pinned by Elon Musk, and it came up last night. Heart, Rocket, Rocket, Heart by Elon. And these fake NASA astronauts in there with their fake hair stuff, right?
We're coming back before long, so, don't make all those plans without me. We'll be back before too long.
I can tell you at the outset, all of us have the utmost respect for Mr. Musk, and obviously respect and admiration for our President of the United States, Donald Trump. We appreciate them. We appreciate all that they do for us, for human spaceflight, for our nation. And we're thankful that they are in the positions they're in.
We're coming back.
Okay, so these are the two stranded astronauts that Elon Musk is going to save. And a lot of these things seem fake because of the fake, the hair stuff, and we've seen these things documented by people. And I wonder where the people are who would call this out, who are now Trumpers and Elon Musk people, right? Because, they usually come out and say all these things are so fake and whatever. And yet, there it is. Elon Musk is pitting this to his thing and, the whole stuff. They're convenient truthers. Like Elon Musk and Trump are truthers when it's something that suits their agenda. But when it isn't, they're not, right? So, they're just mainstream, bullshitters, right? So a few things to get to here. Arrest pedophiles on the Epstein list? No. Arrest campus students for anti-Semitism? Yes. So that was, interesting Trump meme. Then there's, let me show you Don Lemon's here. Okay, so I saw it. It was when I just showed you the Elon Musk NASA thing. I saw that on Twitter. Don Lemons was trending, which is interesting because he had that fallout with Elon Musk. I I think he might post stuff on Twitter because he doesn't have much of a choice. And he's being interviewed by Bill Maher. Now, it's interesting that Don Lemon still has, he's such a dope, like really bad. Like, has nothing to say. And it's proven over and over again. He's just like a boob, a douche, a boob, like just an idiot, like a village idiot. And, his takes are horrible and remedial and just, like I like the mainstream stuff from like 10 years ago. Like he's still caught in the most superficial mainstream takes from 10 years ago. Like he hasn't even evolved since, I mean, his bad takes haven't even caught up to, like, they're not even current. And for some reason, he's still a guest on these shows, and I don't understand why he would bring an audience to you. Like if you're booking somebody, some part of you would want that person to bring new audience members to you. Well, here he is with Bill Maher.
It's the same thing that when I see not all black Republicans, but I see a black MAGA person who is carrying Donald Trump's water and they know that he's lying, it is the shortest line to the front. Because if you're black and you're whatever, you're just in line with a bunch of other Democrats that are doing the same thing that you're doing. But if you become a black MAGA person, it's like, whoa, let's book this person, let's put him on television.
So you don't think you can be a sincere black MAGA person?
No, I just said, I don't think that, I just said I think there can be sincere Republicans.
But you can't be a sincere black Republican?
I don't think that you can be a rational MAGA, be black and be a rational MAGA person. I think you can be black and be a Republican.
I think they would find that very insulting.
Well, I mean, the truth is often insulting.
You're a dope, Dodd, and that's insulting, but it's true. The thing is that nobody's sincere or rational that is engaged in politics. Like if you are pushing, and I think for people who have been disenfranchised, like people who identify as, are really into being black, like this is their thing. Like if you're really into your ethnicity, like if I was really into being Italian or really into being, whatever my makeup is, Albanian, Irish, these things, German. Like I don't feel anything about those places. Just from the standpoint that people look at me and my last name's Romano and they think I'm Italian. And I'm really Sicilian and I don't even really understand the distinction, but there's a distinction there. Sicily was like a prison place where they shipped criminals, and it's in the southern part of Italy. It's like an island. But I don't really get into this stuff that much, right? My ethnic identity, and even my identity as an American. Like when I went to spiritual gatherings in India, and there would be people from Europe and all over the world, and they saw me very much as an American. But I'm not a typical American. I wouldn't be at a gathering if I was. But they just wanted to look at me like an American and whatever that meant, and there were some prejudice and some whatever, good things, bad things, whatever, depending on their personal view of America. And like, we're so different in America. I mean, we all have, some things that are specific to American upbringing that other people, can see, whatever, some entitlements or whatever it is. But, like when people think, all right, this is, your group of people and you're this kind of person and, they're influenced by your country. And yeah, sure, that exists to some extent, right? But I don't care about that stuff. Like, it just doesn't matter to me. I mean, at soul level, it's finding what you are as a soul and what your soul path is. And your ethnicity and where you live is part of it. Like, it's part of your journey because that's where you are. But it shouldn't be as big a deal as it is to people, right? But so people who really think of themselves as black and, or into the black culture, it would be hard for them if I was, if I was one of those people, right? It'd be hard for me to trust any politician because of, anything from Tuskegee to, in general, you're kind of a truther just based in your ethnicity, right? Because you don't trust the government, right? You don't trust the powers that be, the media, because of just the demographic you belong to. There's people who grow up in a a demographic that's either a minority or ostracized to some extent or whatever it is. And just based on that demographic, you should have a hard time trusting the powers that be. Like you're already halfway to being a truther because of that, right? And so, embracing MAGA or embracing Joe Biden or embracing any of these things, it should be very, it just shouldn't be something that's done. So there's no sincerity there. Like they, for the most part, didn't like Kamala Harris, right? And it wasn't because she was a woman, and it wasn't because she was a Democrat. It was because she was very sketchy, right? And so, not so many people will embrace. I mean, just in terms of like, white people don't embrace every white politician and every, regardless of your demographics. Women don't embrace every woman politician. Men don't embrace every man politician, right? Just because somebody's got some similarities to you. In fact, most people don't really get enthusiastic about their politicians. There's a lot of bogus enthusiasm for Trump, which I explained, in the beginning of this video, the introduction, that people are desperate and they want something to change and they want something else, right? So if you're a pundit, like he's saying, and you have a choice between where you're going to be just another African American pundit that's a Democrat, or you can pop and be a pundit that's for Donald Trump, why wouldn't you do the Trump thing? I mean, none of it matters, right? If you're just trying to build a brand and you're trying to get some recognition, you're going to do a lot better, like he said, because you're going to go right to the front of the line. I mean, for me, it's being a truther. Like, I think if you're a truther, you're much better off, especially if you're, somebody who, I mean, all these people who had some notoriety. Don Lemons is here, Bill Maher, because Bill Maher is flirting with truther stuff too. Joe Rogan, these people, whatever it is. You're going to pop a lot more if you're somebody who's in the Hollywood beast or in mainstream media. Megyn Kelly, another example. Somebody who just, you flirt with some of these truther narratives and your popularity and your brand goes crazy. If you're going to, be insincere or even sincere about it, whatever it is, you just have to go a little bit truther. That would be the best strategy for somebody. I mean, Stephen A. Smith is somebody who's, he wants to, they superficially flirt with some of these truther narratives. And I think, most of these people sincerely doubt the official story. I mean, I don't know how you could be a part of this thing and be around these people, hobnob with celebrities and media people and politicians and money people and people in power, which all these, these popular people do, and not see the bullshit and not see that it's fake, And so, Don Lemon's take is just silly because, some part of you is strategizing and having a career, and you got to figure out what's best for your career. I mean, that's everybody. And you join with something, you get some point of view, you have your sponsors, you have your audience. Very few people just tell the truth and just don't care and let the chips fall where they may. Like, I just say whatever, whatever I can, and it's getting easier to say things. There's less censorship on YouTube. And I don't care if there's Republican people or Democratic people or people of any demographic that get upset with me, or any, people in their belief system, people who are a certain type of Christians. I just tell the truth the way I see it. I might be wrong, and, then the information's just flowing, but I don't even care about it. Like, I don't, that doesn't affect everything. I'll get to that. There's a comment I want to get to. Let's go with this Trump thing first here. Look at this clueless MNFer. So I finished this part of the video, but I'm going back to add this. I'm already in the editing process. This guy.
Well, I have unknowingly pissed the MAGA people off.
You do everything unwittingly and unknowingly, right? Like, what do you well, let's just listen to what he's going to say here.
Again, I go to bed and I wake up to controversy. Apparently, MAGA, they're upset or triggered by something I said about black MAGA and MAGA in general on Bill Maher's podcast. Okay. It's always the same right-wing trolls, right-wing media ginning up controversy because they have nothing better to do, and proving my point. So you want to know what I have to say?
You mean your show is the definition of nothing better to do, right? Like, you have nothing better to do because you're never going to get a job in mainstream media again, and social media is the only outlet you have something of substance to say.
Watch the Don Lemon Show on YouTube today, 10 a.m. Also live on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Tune in if you really want to know what I have to say about it.
No one really wants that. I mean, no one with half a brain. And so, look at this guy. So, first of all, when he says, I unwittingly or unknowingly, that's an out-and-out lie. Even this dope knows if you go on Bill Maher, he knows enough knows enough that his big social media following is pissing off MAGA people and them showing up and hating on him on his show. Like, that's where he's getting the majority of his views. Saying something that's controversial in the MAGA people and saying that black people can't be MAGA, legitimate, sincere MAGA people, is silly, right? It's also silly for right-wing people to take this guy seriously when he got kicked off of CNN, which is a failing network. I mean, I don't take anything the mainstream media people say seriously because they have zero effect. They've been denutted. They don't change anything. They don't affect anything. They only affect people who watch them and take it seriously, which is really older folks, right? Everyone else is just there for mockery. And, of course, when they report an actual event, I mean, when there's some legitimate news, like a tornado or some shit like that, something that happens, like in the beginning, before the spin sets in, right? But Megyn Kelly and these people that hate on Don Lemons, he's someone to make fun of and enjoy, right? His stupidity, just like Trump is, like they all are. Like, you can enjoy them for their goofiness, and if you don't like them, if they irritate you, don't watch them. Watch the ones that this Kanye just released this kind of epic song, which is I'll get into that. It's a whole thing, right? It involves Diddy, Kanye and Don Lemons got into it. And Don Lemons is a tool. I mean, he's just the epitome of just everything that's wrong with mainstream media. He's the poster child, and they fired him. He's not even on mainstream media, and he's floundering on social media. But he has figured out by saying controversial things when he does get a chance to be on a show that people might watch, like Bill Maher's, that the MAGA people will go after him and then tune in to his show, right? Because otherwise he has nothing but, Trump bullshit stuff that, is just Don Lemons. But no one should take the guy seriously. And the guy's just, I mean, he's gotten at least smart enough to realize how he can gain an audience. And I said this when I was watching him, that he should stop pretending to be, going after liberal people who most of them can see through him. He's got some fans, right? Whatever. He's got some people who actually tuned into his show. Not that many. Not enough to keep him on CNN. But now he has MAGA people going after him all the time, and that's his bread and butter. And so this is everything that I'm going to talk about in this video. Like, none of this stuff matters. It's all just smoke and mirrors and, fake outrage and sanctimony and all this bullshit. And nobody really, should take any of it seriously. Although I'm going to show you a few things here that, we can't stop or prevent, and they're probably going to happen one way or another. And it's, things that Trump's actually doing, and the Democrats are allowing him to do it. And I'll cover that at the end of the video when I talk about this electric whatever movie with the girl from Stranger Things and Chris Pratt. So this happened last night. I got this video recommended to me.
Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 310 on the East Coast and 1210 on the West Coast. I do want to get you out to some breaking news that we are following as we take a live look over the White House here in D.C. President Donald Trump announcing that he has now ordered airstrikes against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. I want to pop this.
So he's going after the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And I can only imagine this is a direct order from Israel. So what Trump did in his first term, the one thing that I say is kind of a big thing for me in terms of him being a good person or a legitimate president. Like, so much of what he did was bullshit and illegitimate and, just self-serving and self-sabotaging and him being worked and him being played and him being, this dope. But the one thing that I was happy with him was that he didn't continue any of these bullshit wars, even though he came in, with a, try to brag and be, aggressive in these things. I mean, he was saying that he would use nuclear weapons in a heartbeat and things like that. As a campaigner, in 2016. But he really didn't do this killing of innocent people, which I'm very happy about. He didn't push the military-industrial complex, and I'm sure there was substantial pressure for him to do so. And there were plans on the table in the Pentagon and, these things. But Trump resisted some of these things, these bad shit, bullshit wars that were perpetrated by Bush, George W. Bush, and Obama, and all those people, like the Joe Biden, Senator and Vice President Joe Biden, and the people who are in power, all these Chuck Schumer and all these people that would push these bullshit wars. And he didn't bomb innocent people, didn't drone innocent people on the same level. Then he had a few little things he did, but nothing like Obama was doing and his predecessors. And so him doing this is clearly about Israel, right? And how much he's owned by Israel. Like, he's just owned by Israel. And if you're a truther, you know that there's like some sort of dysfunctional relationship between the Israeli lobby. So much of the truth community is people who blame Jews for everything. They blame the Jews, in air quotes, for everything. Like, they say they control everything, it's their fault, this thing, right? Which I don't agree with. Like, I just, I've talked about this a lot, all these type of things. The blame is shared amongst all of us. And there's all these power groups, and they're all sucky, and they're all doing bad things, and they're all self-serving. But there is something there, right? There is something there with the Israeli lobby and the amount of people with dual citizenship or relationships with Israel that are in power positions, and that politicians have to sign a pledge to defend Israel, American politicians, which is completely fucked up. And Donald Trump is way beyond that in his support for Israel. And so this is, bombing Yemen and killing Houthis, which is probably also civilians.
This up on your screen. It is a portion of a post by President Trump just posted to his Truth Social. You can see it there on your screen. He says, "Today, I have ordered the United States military to launch decisive and powerful military action against the Houthi terrorists in Yemen. They have waged an unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against American and other ships, aircraft, and drones." The statement goes on to say Joe Biden's response was pathetically weak, so the unrestrained Houthis just keep going. It has been over a year since a U.S. flag commercial ship safely sailed through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, or the Gulf of Aden.
Okay, so that's not going to get better with him doing this. But this is an act that it benefits Israel. And, look at him. He's got his Donald Trump face here. And, I want to get a comment here because, but he's just owned by Israel. And that, you can't be a truther and be owned by Israel. Okay, so the Houthis are upset with America for their backing of Israel. Mostly they're targeting Israeli ships and things like this. And, their connection to Iran. Again, moving towards World War III. And this is Trump being owned by Israel. Which should exclude any truther from backing Trump. Because he's completely owned, right? But then I got these comments from this person. Sad to see you have TDS wasting energy on individual rather than critiquing the puppet masters. All puppets played by the same master with a script. Why hate? See the overall picture. Now, this person who either didn't watch my videos or doesn't understand them, right? And, I got a lot of people who think that, oh, I know more than you, or, this is a competition or something in their minds, which it isn't in mine, because it doesn't mean shit, right? But for them to say, oh, wow, you're just not seeing deep enough. That's what these comments. Oh, I see so much deeper than you. You're just stuck on Trump when I'm going after the puppet masters. And the real puppet master is God, right? The real controlling aspect of everything is divinity. There are always divine forces at play, trying to clean up the mess that's been made by people. And some of that mess is the system itself. And so, and I say this over and over again. People are like thinking if you go down the rabbit hole, you're going to find truth. The rabbit hole of the so-called controllers, what people call the elite, and that somehow they're responsible for everything. It's a huge truth or mistake to think that the people who control the system are the ones making the decisions. Like everything that's done on planet Earth is done with with some orchestrated by a divine plan. And no one can escape it. And people think that they're making individual decisions, but mostly what people are doing is rebelling against the divinity within them. And so my covering Trump is that I cover things that people are interested in. And I get a lot of these comments now. I'm not a Trumper, but why don't you leave him alone? And it's silly because they're not watching the rest of my videos, and I don't care about Trump. And when they say I have TDS, it's silly because I don't care. Like if someone has TDS, it means that my lens has been distorted, that I am deranged because of my hatred for Trump. And Trump was somebody I enjoyed his first term for 3 years, and how it provoked the left. In terms of my watching a show. I mean, when you're watching a show and you know the show is fake, but you identify with some characters, you like some characters more than others, you have some preferences. There's some people I just really don't like that I cover, and I'm glad when I get to stop covering them. So everything runs its course. And celebrities, for the most part, I'm just, it's hard for me to get back into covering celebrities, and YouTube isn't rewarding my celebrity coverage like they did in the beginning. My celebrity videos where I was getting millions of views. And so I couldn't ignore that. But most of the people who watch celebrity videos aren't really going to be, make the transition to my deeper level videos, the ones that have to do with divinity within you, which is really the goal here. So, it's unnecessary for me to cover celebrities. People want to hear me mock Britney and things like that, and that's fun. I don't mind doing it. But it really doesn't have any sort of a payoff like it used to. And so, in terms of viewership, some part of my channel has to be, I have to meet people where they're at. And where they're at is talking about what's going on in the world right now. People are concerned about what's happening with Trump. And there's the Trumpers who, if you're a Trumper, you're never going to get the higher level stuff I have to offer here. If you're someone who bought into Trump, you just won't. And so, there's no reason for me to have Trumpers here, or, no one complained about me making fun of Biden, right? But this person, let me read the comments again. This person saying, sad to see you have TDS, wasting energy at an individual rather than critique the puppet masters. All puppets played by the same master with a script. Why hate? See the overall picture. Not understanding what I do here. It's far beyond your consciousness. And not because I'm competitive or I'm looking down at you or I'm telling you I'm better than you. Because that's, irrelevant, right? To the, what I do here, which is about, getting in touch with one's soul and seeing the divine plan at play, right? Which is the end of our system because our system sucks. And Trump is a part of the ending of our system. Like he's carrying out some divine orders without his knowledge because he's not working consciously for God. But he's, a part of this whole thing, which is to bring down the system, which has to happen. There's no way around that. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand that. If it's too hard for you to take or it's too scary, that's fine. It is what it is. But to say that these people who are the controllers, that's what let's look at the puppet masters. Who gives a shit, right? We know that there are people in the shadows who are controlling, and Israel's one of Trump's controllers, and Wall Street, and the financial people. But if you talk about those people, it doesn't do anything. If you point any of these things out, nothing changes. I'm not trying to change anything here. I'm not trying to expose anything, right? It's just that this is the kind of stuff that people want to hear, and I cover things like this because I can put in my spiritual, information and things that, people are not going to resonate with or embrace because they're just not able to do it, right? But if you're a person who thinks that by watching videos and making videos and talking about things, it's going to change what we're seeing, and your knowledge of what's going on is going to prepare you for something without preparing you, without doing anything to act, but just by watching something and knowing more than your sheeple relatives, you're completely deceiving yourself. You're bullshitting yourself, right? That knowing these things is somehow going to help you, only in the sense that, psychologically reconciling some of these things will help you sleep better. You're understanding some need to know stuff because, it's going to help you make decisions or prepare you. But if you're not preparing yourself in some prepper way, you're not gaining skills and preparing yourself for the collapse of the system, or preparing your kids or your family in some way, not going over the top and being like goofy about it where everybody starts worrying about you, right? In a real way. It's not a show that you can go out there and post something on social media. Look at how much more I know than the average dummy, right? Like that kind of bullshit. No, it's not like that at all. It shouldn't be like that at all, right? That doesn't help anybody. That's just you trying to display your ego, right? There's something here for people to adjust themselves to. I read those whispers messages. The whispers message that talked about, how people have, let me just read the beginning lines here. If I still have it up, I might have taken it down. Where he says, life is change and it is advisable to adapt to situations, which is something humans don't do easily. They keep searching throughout their existence for a solid anchor in all the manifestations of their life, but that isn't feasible. Fundamentally, they seek a stability that does not resist indefinitely the vagaries of time. See, deep down in each person, there's a desire to connect with your soul. Your ego resists this. Your ego doesn't want that because your ego gets diminished when that happens. And your ability to make the wrong decisions, your ability to go indulge in your addictions and your pleasures that that aren't part of your soul's path. It's like you're playing a video game, and your avatar, the character in the video game that you're playing, doesn't go seek to complete the goal of the video game, doesn't seek to complete level after level, and just starts hanging out and indulging and getting drunk and gambling and doing whatever it is, right? Just doing bullshit things, getting involved in like some crazy conspiracy stuff that's not healthy, right? That might be true, but it's not healthy, and doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And you're there trying to work the controllers, and the fucking avatar isn't responding. And it's stuck in the video game doing bullshit things, and you're just watching it helplessly trying to get the thing back on track so you complete the goal. That's what your soul is, right? Your soul's doing that. And all this bullshit truther stuff and all this stuff about change. Oh my God, you got to penetrate deeper. You got to pull back more of the veil. For what? You want to pick up every stone and look under it and sniff around and, whatever kind of thing it is, right? Looking for some, grossness, some sliminess, right? Let's say you find your spouse is cheating on you. Like you have solid knowledge your spouse is cheating. And then you go spy on them and you hide in the closet while they're having sex. It's like, at some point you're just enjoying it, right? Like you like being cucked or whatever it is, right? You like being screwed over. You have enough information to make a decision. All right, they're cheating on me, or they're going to leave, or you're not. You're going to confront them, or you're not. Like, whatever it is, you've got a path now. But no, you need more information. You're going to indulge in it. Like, it's a lot of what's going on in the truth community in general is people just looking at how they're being fucked, right? How they're being screwed over. And just, oh my God, they're screwing me over again here, and oh, look at what they're doing over here, and wow, look at the elites, and look at how they're it's just, why? Like, why are you doing that? Like, you have enough information to adjust yourself. And I say this again, and it's gonna, it doesn't gonna land with most people. You have a soul. You are a soul. That's something that people say. You don't have a soul. You are a soul. Your soul has a body. Your soul has a life, right? Your soul, which is what you are, has a life. And so figuring out what your soul's path is and what you're doing here and, acquiescing to your ego, submitting to your soul's path, even just connecting your soul and say, what am I doing here? What's my path? What should I be doing? praying to God, help me, God, do what I'm supposed to be doing here. How many people want to do that? It means giving up things and changing things, and changing just how you spend your time with your, just in terms of your indulgences in your mind. You're just sitting there scrolling through the internet, looking at stuff, and for what? Like, you could be focusing on your soul and your spiritual path. It's all just a distraction, right? You're here in this illusion, this third dimensional illusion, and your soul has a purpose and a path, and you're probably not on it. Maybe Donald Trump is on it because he's supposed to be a catalyst for destruction of a system that is, long since overdue for being retired, right? For being, being a dominant system in this world. It needs to be erased, and people have to, gravitate to something better, because it's taking everybody in the wrong direction. And so, at some point the system will be taken down, and the people who are supposed to be doing that work will do that work, and the rest of us have our own work and our own assignments, and figuring out what your assignment is and what your purpose is and what God's plan is for you and what your soul's plan is, your soul's path is, something that nobody does. Why wouldn't you do that? If you believe you have a soul, why don't you figure out what your soul wants you to do, instead of just indulging and being caught up in a video game, and you're just spinning your wheels and you're miserable anyway. You're not, you don't sleep well. You're not, whatever the thing is. And praying to God, all you do is pray to God and say, help me. Help me get back on my path. Help me, get rid of these superficial ideas. And so for me, it's clear, and I say it over and over again, I don't give a shit about the stuff I cover. Whatever it is that's going on in the material world, whether it's celebrity stuff or, whatever. I have some mild interest in it because it's like watching a show, like you're invested in a TV show. But if you start thinking that TV show is important to real life, it isn't. And so when dopes come to me, why are you covering Trump so much? Why don't you look at the people controlling him? Well, I mention, his handlers from time to time, but they're not in control. If God has a plan, and there is a divine force, a divine essence, and purification of our mistaken abuse of our freedom to choose to do the wrong thing is a part of that, cleaning up the messes that people make by their choices and bringing things back to a pristine divine level, a deep level, a deep divine level, and these superficial personalities and egos that get distracted and get indulge in these things that are not of their, not for their best interest and not their primary reason for being here, getting lost and wandering the world doing fucked up shit because you're not connected to your soul, your soul's path, and you're just, wandering around with fucking bumping into shit, right? And so, that's what I offer here. And people don't want to take it because their egos don't want to submit to their soul. That's the bottom line. People don't want to give up their ability to choose to do the wrong thing. That's all it is. All this stuff, that's all this is. It's, like little misguided toddlers, and, myself included. It's a tough thing to give up your, you have to fight against your tendencies to, to have your own personal I do, I am, your personal egotistical decisions that are away from your soul's path. And Americans particularly, they don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to submit to some authority, even if it's an internal authority, whether it's the God and divinity within them. They don't want to bow before God and do what God wants them to do. And so that's why America is particularly fucked, because no matter how many times you get warned and you're going on the wrong, path, you continuously ignore those warnings because you want to, it's you got to fight for your right to party, right? I mean, what a dumb idea. This was a song by the Beastie Boys. When I was in college, you have to fight for your right to party. You have a right to party, right? You have a right to get drunk and indulge in some kind of bullshit, self-destructive behaviors. Whenever you drink alcohol or use drugs, whether they're pharmaceutical drugs or they're, street drugs or whatever, they impair your ability to exist. They make you stupider. They make you, they impair your brain's ability to. I mean, the first thing that alcohol does is gets rid of your brain's ability for self-perception. That's why you act like a fool when you're drunk. And every one of these drugs does something. And, people take ayahuasca. I heard Joe Rogan talking about this with somebody. And, like, he was, he's just saying how why do you want to meditate and do spiritual life when you can just do these drugs, these mushrooms or ayahuasca or any of these things, any of these types of things? Because that's just some bullshit thing that you're doing that impairs your ability, and it's often a toxin. These things are toxins. They're neurotoxins, or they attack some part of your, any of these pain relievers and things, and they impair your ability to do things, and they create spiritual grossness, and they're not real spiritual experiences because you need something material to open up your consciousness, so to speak. And they often come with side effects like hallucinations and things. And you can have some spiritual, revelations when you do these things. I'm not going to dismiss all the, the outcomes, but, it's not pure because you're taking something that you don't need to take that has side effects. And the reason why it makes you throw up and you go through these physical issues is because it's not a true spiritual experience. It's a physical experience that you're having, right? And so, like, just connecting with your soul and meditating, and then seeing that you have things that you've got to clear out of the way, you have to clean off yourself that have to be cleaned, so that you can connect to God on a deeper level. And it's a discipline, and it's not some pie in the sky thing, and it's not going to make you great. It's not going to make you, be special or whatever it is. Like, it's no ego gratification in it. And that's why people don't want it, because people want to be great. They want to be popular. They want to be famous. They want to be rich. They want to be all these things, right? And so they, anything that's going to prevent them from indulging in what they consider their right to party, their right for material life, is something that they're not interested in, right? They don't want to do that. They're surrendering. They're submitting. They're giving control over to their soul. And the ego doesn't want to give up control. It's hijacked your life. It's hijacked your purpose. And people in America have big egos, and it's just a thing. And so, like, that, something I say here that's different. And really, all this other stuff doesn't mean shit, right? All this other, whatever's happening in society, other than, the inevitable collapse of our system, and you preparing for something that you have inside information, you should be able to see that at least it's a chance that our system's going to collapse, and maybe you should put some effort into preparing for that, whatever that means. And so, like, silly little comments like this, because, the truth community is fucked. Like, it's the orientation to it. You're not going to wake anybody else up. You're not going to change anything. And so what is the information good for? There's value to this information, but what is it? Why is this information important? Why do you have this information about a system that most people just don't want to go to sleep and take the blue pill and continuously be locked into the matrix and not see behind the curtain a little bit? And you just need to see a little bit behind the curtain to know that this whole system and the way it's leading you down a deviant path has to be ignored, and you have to figure out why you're truly here. What's your true purpose? Anyways, let's get back into it. Okay, so in terms of importance, in at least one's material life, there are a couple stories. There's lots of stories going on with Trump that are important. It's not like just Trump is fucking around and messing things up and doddering around like Joe Biden, and they're not doing things like what Joe Biden did, for example, with censorship. Like, it affected my job here, what we could talk about. It affected your ability to get truthful information on these various platforms, all these things. Changed these platforms in terms of their ability to have quality content on their, the platforms, like Facebook and YouTube and these things, right? And so, you have, and also having a centralized place where the most people could get access to this information. Going to Rumble or going to these other platforms where there's a more specified audience. And so there are things that affect your life, affects your ability to again access information or other things. What's going on with the Houthis in Yemen? It's a it's a move towards war with Iran, which is a move towards more war with Russia, and it's a move towards nuclear war and World War III, right? So these things are going to affect you. It's going to affect the planet. They're going to be real things that happen. The other thing here is Trump has done this.
President Trump will sign several executive orders in the Oval Office around noon today, and we have learned that it appears he could be invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. The president
of 1798. He's going back to 1798. You know, in terms of so-called illegal aliens, I have been not affected at all, at least as far as I know. And so I see there are people who I suppose are not American citizens working in areas around, I see them working, like in places, right? Not directly related to me, but I'm like, all right, there's people working. And I don't know how that's affecting me and the economy. These people are working. They have jobs, and they, seem to be. They're not criminals. They're not, any of these things, right? And so, in terms of the illegal aliens crisis that we hear about, it hasn't affected me at all, other than hearing people talk about it. And I'm not saying it isn't negatively affecting some Americans or some people who are of issue. I guess there's somebody I know who is bidding against people who are illegal, somebody who does construction work who's, like 2 or 3 degrees of separation away from me. Somebody that I guess my wife was telling me about. And they have a company it's like a family company, and they are bidding against legal aliens, and legal aliens don't have the insurance and all these things. So, it's affecting those people, people who I kind of know, right? That kind of thing. So, if it's affecting you personally, then this is a big deal. Like if it's affecting your ability to do your job or gain an income, or it's undercutting the money that you would make, you have to drop your prices and take less money because you're competing against people who don't have the same financial overhead as you do because they're not citizens, these things. But for the most part, I don't see a bunch of illegal alien criminals running around making everybody's life more miserable. Maybe that's coming. Maybe people are being imported to, they're being brought here to create some army in the future that'll be, not compassionate to American people the way that our troops would be, people who are American citizens, things like that. There's possibilities for disaster here, but not so much that I think they should be invoking an act from 17 whatever it is, right?
invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. The president saying this would pave the way for faster mass deportations of those in the country illegally, and he campaigned on invoking that wartime law. The law has been invoked 3 times during major conflicts. That includes the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. But there are a lot of questions about exactly what this is.
Okay, so in World War II, they locked up Japanese people. Remember these internment camps. And these were people who came to America and were, for the most part, just wanting to be Americans. And they weren't here to do, they came to America before the war with Japan happened and these things in Pearl Harbor. And so, it's not good stuff, right? I don't know who they locked up in 1812. I don't know if that was the Native Americans. And, when they originally made this act, if they were calling Native Americans illegal, the harmful aliens, alien enemies, right? And so, but it's not cool now. Like him doing this now is not cool. It's unnecessary. He's making a bigger deal about something that, is a legitimate problem, but not the problem where they and eventually evoke martial law, and they're treating something that's a war that's not a war.
So as we've been gathering this information, I did want to bring in John Sandweg, the former director of ICE and former acting general counsel at the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and help discuss this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Of course. Well, first off, I do want to ask you, because folks out there have heard a lot about this over the last several hours. Can you explain exactly what the Alien Enemies Act is for folks out there watching?
Sure. It's a law that was passed by Congress in 1798, of course, that would give the president an authority during wartime, if there's a foreign invasion or incursion into the United States, to detain and deport or expel from the United States individuals without, bypassing any sort of courts, without giving them due process of law. And so what the president is now trying to do is invoke that in the context of our current immigration situation, because the biggest impediment, Josh, he faces for the mass deportation plan are these backlogged immigration courts and the fact that most of the undocumented migrants in the United States are required to see an immigration judge and have a deportation hearing before they.
So this law doesn't apply because we're not at war. And we're certainly not at war with all of these different countries where these people are coming from, right? And so, this was them saying, all right, we have immigrants from Japan. We're at war with Japan in World War II. I think that was the number one. I don't think they were expelling Germans, people of German background. My grandfather was German. He was like 100% German. And he fought in World War I and World War II. Lots of German people here, and I don't think they locked them up in internment camps, even though we were more at war with Germany than we were with Japan, right? Germany was more of a problem. And so this has usually come about where they're throwing out people of color. I mean, there's some racism here. And, it's a bullshit thing Trump's doing. He's trying to find a loophole, which he always does, because he's a loophole person. And, some of you guys believe the immigration problem is worse than it is. Some people, don't care, whatever it might be. And, I don't know how bad it is, but I haven't seen it personally. And I'm not saying it isn't, but it's not this act. Like, they can pass other laws that would be, these people don't deserve due process if they're illegal immigrants, but sometimes they're working for people and companies and they're not criminals. They're not doing any harm other than breaking the law to get here, right? And so it's pretty sketchy what Trump's doing, but Trump does shit like this all the time.
Also breaking tonight, President Trump has invoked a more than 200-year-old law to speed up the deportation of illegal immigrants linked to a violent Venezuelan gang. But just hours after...
Okay, so there was that one video that came out of these gang members walking around with machine guns, possibly in an American apartment building. Possibly. Maybe, maybe not. And even if they were, it's one video, and there's this idea that this gang and, this stuff was a threat to you. And, Trump said the people from Springfield, Ohio were eating the dogs. And I don't see him deporting mass. There's one-fifth of the population there is Haitians, where they're, some of them have been there since Trump was president last. They came in because they lost a lot of population there. Some plants closed down, and they needed workers, and they got a lot of Haitians that end up going there. And for the most part, the people aren't that upset about it. And some woman said her cat was missing, and people said, well, I bet the Haitians are eating cats. And then the next thing you know, it was like, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, remember that bullshit stuff that Trump said in the debate. And Trump, they knew it wasn't true. J.D. Vance went to the governor and went to the mayor of the town. There was information that they were given saying that isn't true. We have no evidence these people are eating people's pets. And, they weren't it wasn't the immigration crisis that Trump made it out to be. And that's very important because if you're going to do shit like this, Trump just doesn't give a shit about throwing away your rights or your freedoms for his agenda. And he's, there was these two things I have. I don't think I have the memes anymore, and I don't need to show them here. But there was a time where he made Dianne Feinstein ghoulgasm over gun control. And Trump didn't understand the Republican ideology behind it, and he was going to give them all that they wanted. And Dianne Feinstein couldn't believe how happy, she couldn't believe what Trump was saying. She was so happy that Trump was listening to her and agreeing with her. And then, of course, his handlers got to him and said, yeah, you can't do that shit. Another one was with asset forfeiture, where Trump had a bunch of law enforcement people who wanted to just take people's shit. And they tried to do it to Trump, or they did it to Trump over the documents. And he didn't understand what the problem was until probably he personally experienced it. But he was like, why should we do this? And so Trump will throw away your rights. And the two things that he's going to go after that are of concern are martial law and posse comitatus. And this is a way to do that, where he's saying that this is a wartime situation, that we're at war with these Venezuelan gangs, and we need to bypass the laws. And the laws, as cumbersome as they might be, are there to protect you from tyranny, right? Like a lot of them are there to protect you from tyranny, And Trump wants to bring back tyranny because he thinks he's hamstrung by these laws that don't allow him to do what he wants to do. And even this thing with this judge, right?
After issuing the order, a federal judge blocked the move. Sarah Maki joins us now with more on the history of that wartime authority and the legal battle it's all started now. Hi, Sarah.
Yeah, hi, Chris. Well, right, that is called the Alien Enemies Act, enacted just 22 years after the Declaration of Independence. A federal judge has already halted the rollout, but our legal expert tells us this will end up in front of the Supreme Court, and soon.
Okay, so we'll see where this goes, and we'll see if there's some sort of checks and balances to this moron that is Donald Trump, who has been given free rein by the people that control him to, this is going to destroy your country. It's all these QB morons. Remember these QBs? And I made fun of them because they claim to be patriots. And yet one of their core movements and works was to push for these military tribunals where people like Tom Hanks, because a few dopey celebrities and, Isaac Cappy and morons like that came out and said that Tom Hanks was a pedo. And there was some evidence about this, but it wasn't concrete to the extent that he was a part of, the whole thing with Jeffrey Epstein and this stuff. And what they wanted to do was render these people and take them to Guantanamo Bay and get rid of their rights as American citizens just because they heard some bullshit on the internet that may or may not be true, may or may not be exaggerated, and not give them due process and remove the rule of law. And they wanted Trump to do that. But they said they were patriots, and they were want to give away their rights, their habeas corpus rights, which Trump is trying to get rid of anyway. And if he does that, he can just arrest you, or the Democrats, when they take part, he can just arrest you when they take control. And so, it's just stupid. People just don't know what they're doing, right? And it's just going to lead to, I guess this is why we don't want this law to be taken. This is why this law was here. When they realized they're being handcuffed and taken to a fucking FEMA camp because they posted something on the internet, and Trump doesn't have to, or the Democratic person, whoever is going to be president next, doesn't have to listen to you or, doesn't have to give you due process. They can just take you and throw you into some FEMA camp or whatever it is, right? So I'm probably going to have to agree with this dude now about this thing because it's so fucked, right? That these people are starting to make sense, these MSNBCers.
In 1942, there was a Boy Scout troop in Cody, Wyoming. And if you've ever been in Boy Scouts, or if you've ever had a kid, or in my case, a brother in Boy Scouts, you might know that the big day on the calendar
You weren't in Boy Scouts, Rachel?
is, say it with me now, Boy Scout Jamboree. In 1942, in Wyoming, a Boy Scout troop put out a call to all the nearby Boy Scout troops in all the nearby towns that they should get together to do the Boy Scout Jamboree that year, which is merit badge stuff and tying knots and digging ditches and making campfires, pitching tents.
Oh, pitching tents. Fuck.
And camping out. It's all that stuff. But in 1942,
Sounds pretty gay. No.
In Wyoming, when this one troop put out the call for the Jamboree, the other Boy Scout troops in the area did not respond, or they said no. Only one local Boy Scout troop in Cody, Wyoming, said yes, they would do it. The reason everybody else said no, or they didn't bother to answer, is because the Boy Scout troop that put out the call for the Jamboree was the one inside Hart Mountain, behind the barbed wire at the internment camp at Hart Mountain, Wyoming. It's basically a concentration camp where Japanese Americans had been forcibly relocated by the U.S. government at the start of World War II. Guard towers, barbed wire.
I knew this was going to come to something like this.
Soldiers.
You started with Boy Scout, but it was going to be
guns, policing the perimeter, the whole thing. But that one Boy Scout troop from Cody, that's the one local troop that agreed to come to Hart Mountain to do a Scout Jamboree with the other Boy Scout troop there of Japanese American boys. And they did all the Jamboree stuff. They did the merit badge stuff. They tied knots. They set up tents. And they matched boys up from the two different troops. There were two particularly rambunctious, sort of, you might call them rowdy boys, one from each troop. A kid from Cody whose name was Alan, and a kid from Hart Mountain who was named Norman. And
boy, this is just you're You're really going with this Boy Scout thing. We get the idea here.
Those two particularly rowdy kids, they ended up putting them together. They camped together in the same tent. And they very quickly came up with a scheme together. Because, see, there was this other kid from the Cody troop who Alan really didn't like. He said he was a bully. He really didn't like that kid. And so he enlisted his new tent mate.
So they did a Pearl Harbor, like... they did a Pearl... Did they Pearl Harbor him?
Kid from Heart Mountain, Norman. He enlisted him in a plan. They thought that rain was going to be coming that night when they were camping out in their tent. And so the two of them, Alan and Norman, who had just met, they very carefully dug a moat around their own tent with a channel that led off the moat and downhill. And the channel was aimed right at the tent of the kid who was the bully.
No way. It was a Donald Trump?
And then in the middle of the night, sure enough, the rain came down, the moat filled up, and then the channel off the moat worked. And that downstream tent got inundated with all the rainwater from Alan and Norman's moat, and the bully's tent collapsed.
Okay, so how do we know this kid was actually a bully? Are you just taking... You're not doing investigative journalism here, dude. Like, what if that kid was actually just like a kid that's being picked on, and the kid who was rambunctious and a troublemaker got this Japanese kid in trouble, you know, Pearl Harbored this poor kid, you know, like...
And Alan and Norman collapsed in gleeful laughter at the prank they had pulled. And having pulled that off, Alan and Norman became lifelong friends. That was a very unusual Boy Scout jamboree at Heart Mountain internment camp in 1942.
Now get serious, Rachel. Get serious about this thing.
More than 40 years later, in 1988, that little kid, Alan, from Cody, was now Republican U.S. Senator Alan Simpson of Wyoming. And that little kid, Norman, from Heart Mountain, he was now Democratic Congressman Norm Mineta.
Boom. Knew this was going somewhere. And what happened to that kid that they bullied and his tent collapsed? Did he commit suicide? Where is he now? I want to hear about the fucking bully, Rachel.
And together, in 1988, they convened bipartisan hearings on the legally, strategically, and morally disastrous decisions that led to 120,000 Japanese Americans, some of them citizens, some of them not, being forced out of their homes and forcibly relocated.
Okay, so we get where you're going with this thing. Anything else here?
Last night, we started to see headlines like this one at the Wall Street Journal, quote, Trump to invoke seldom used war.
All right, so, you know, but her point is well taken with that bullshit fucking sanctimonious story about these two fucking senators that were once Boy Scouts and now are corrupt fucking politicians. And they got rid of this bullshit law or pushing back against it. But, you know, like this is, in reality, she's right about Trump because this is not what the law was intended to do. But Trump is a person that's always found legal loopholes, and he pushes these legal loopholes. You know, he went up against the Native American casinos in, I believe, Connecticut. And these casinos were out competing his casinos in Atlantic City. And he said, those aren't real Indians, like just like with Pocahontas. And so, like, they shouldn't be given these rights for their casinos. And he's done that shit before because, you know, like whatever loophole he can get around or whatever way he can skate the law, he will. And sometimes just out and out breaking the law or having his fixers break the law, like Michael Cohen. And so this guy should not be president. It's kind of funny that he is, and they're all scumbags, and he's, you know, not hiding his scumbaggery. But, you know, pushing for this law could ultimately topple down a lot of various rights and things like this in the future, where they can just apply these laws to, you know, you cause anybody who's a problem, like somebody who's, you know, people who are anti-Trumpers, he can just, you know, put them in intern camps that they're some kind of terrorists, you know, just because you're posting things on social media. Or the liberals, when they get in charge, like Joe Biden did, they can use all these things that Trump has done to their advantage, in which a much more strategic way, because they're not, you know, they're not doing it based in his weaknesses and his narcissism. They're doing that as a part of an overall plan. And so this is why this stuff like I said, like I don't care about it, and things are going to go the way they're going to go. But this is why this is important, right? Posse comitatus, martial law, and some of these other things that he's doing here is all, are things that could be disastrous for your life as an American, where you end up in FEMA camps, right? If the goal is to put you in FEMA camps and, depopulate, which is going to be part of it, where they're going to depopulate people and put, young people in these 15-minute cities, and there's going to be, all these things, taking away your land, taking away all these things from you. If that's the goal, if the goal is that you're going to own nothing and love it, what happens between now and 2030, 5 years from now, right? So then there's this. This is for about a week ago.
President Trump's assault on the judiciary by attacking judges and even their families when their rulings don't go his way is well documented. But now as president, he's taking an even more aggressive approach, going after law firms that represent clients like that the president doesn't like. The first to feel his wrath is a law firm which represents former special counsel Jack Smith. Smith, as you know, is now a private citizen, but as special counsel with the Department of Justice, he brought criminal charges against Trump in 2 cases. Smith is expecting to be the subject of a number of investigations by Republicans in Congress for which he'll need legal help. Now, in late February, the president signed a memo suspending the active security clearances of lawyers from a firm called Covington and Burling who represent Jack Smith.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill. Go ahead.
This guy's laughing. Kennedy's just holding his nose because he knows if you know anything about what Kennedy said, he would not be for this, because this is a form of censorship and abuse. This is abuse of power.
In some cases, when sensitive material is involved, attorneys need security clearances to adequately represent a client. For instance, Donald Trump's attorneys had security clearances working on the classified documents case against him and other cases as well.
Okay, so again, why this is important to you, in terms of like legal rights, and this is the stuff to do with the dopey cubies who want Trump to lock people up and throw them in Guantanamo Bay. So there was one brilliant person that said to you guys, not very brilliant, but just reading the room and something that obvious, that Trump was the asset of the Democratic Party, of the all of the people, like all the controllers, that he's their asset. Trump has dominated the country. This is another response to these stupid comments. Why you're talking about Trump? We live in the land of Trump for the past 8 years. Trump dominates every aspect of the American psyche and the American system for 8 years, the American news cycle and all the rest of it. And so I said they're not going to get rid of Trump as an asset. They're not going to find another Donald Trump. He perfectly fits in their plan, right? And the plans to take down America and all the rest of it. Trump is their guy. So what did I say? All this bullshit stuff they're doing of criminal cases against him will collapse. He won't go to jail, and he'll most likely be president again, because I don't think they're going to get rid of Trump until he just can't be president anymore. But he might even have a life after. There might be a whole story of Trump, because Trump was the centerpiece for the Biden administration. If you tuned into these news programs, they're always talking about Trump. Almost every story talked about things that Biden was doing because he had to fix things that Trump did. Like that was their story. Or they were just about Trump itself, right? Trump's court cases, Trump was in the news cycle because it worked for them. That's where their ratings was, talking about Trump, dumping on Trump, right? And so I said he was an asset and they're not going to get rid of him because it's obvious. They've made everything center around Trump. We live in the world of Trump, the country of Trump since 2016. Good, bad, or indifferent, whether you hate him, whether you think he's a boob, whether you think he's a criminal mastermind, whether you think he's a great man, it doesn't matter. Trump is, the focal point of America right now. And so Trump's convictions or his, this guy Jack Smith and the rest of it was all bullshit stuff. And whether Trump knows about it, I think he probably doesn't. Either way, he's using his prosecution of Joe Biden and Joe Biden's administration prosecution of him about Joe Biden going after his political adversaries for Trump to now go after his political adversaries. He's going after him and all these people. And then all the support systems that supported it, even though they never got him. And the reason they didn't get him wasn't because God's watching his back or because he's destined to be this guy who's going to save America. It's because the system was rigged to keep him in play because he was their asset. And everything that he did was left, right, cover. Every court case was some way of keeping Trump in the news and giving him victim consciousness and getting him supported, just like his bullshit assassination attempts that didn't happen. And so all these things are to empower this motherfucker because he doesn't give a shit about your rights or America or any of these things. And anything that stands in his way of his whims and his, he is a dictator on day one, right?
If Mr. Smith's attorneys can have access to sensitive documents, the question is, can he be adequately represented in national security matters by them? According to legal scholars, it could also violate the First Amendment's right to free speech, the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of due process, and the Sixth Amendment's right to effective assistance of counsel.
Yeah, it is going to violate all those things, and Trump doesn't give a shit about him. And you say, well, Jack Smith sucks because he went after Trump. If you're a Trumper, well, you're a moron, because it isn't about going after Jack Smith because he's a part of this thing. It's about going after you, inevitably. They're going to go after everybody to some extent when they have to. When the system turns on you, which inevitably will, when they have to deal with the bankruptcy of America and the mob starts going apeshit, when they start pulling your privileges, whether it be the internet or food or whatever it might be, when America starts tanking and goes into being a shithole country, as Trump calls it, we're on our path to being a shithole country. And when it turns into a shithole country and people don't have the internet to distract them or they don't have food or power or whatever they're suffering, and they go apeshit because they can't handle that reality, then what do they do with you? And they're getting rid of all the laws that would protect your ability to protest or demonstrate or do any of these things. Not that protesting is going to solve anything. You're fucked and you don't even know you're fucked, or you're hoping that there's some miracle Hail Mary out there and it ain't coming. Okay, so I watched this movie yesterday, The Electric State. And this video came up before I watched it. I was going to watch it anyway. And this is, let me just show you this. Let's go back to this. Let's show you this first.
Be like this.
Ours, we would have to turn this on. I think you have to turn it on and charge it.
You had a mirror, no? You can't see yourself.
Okay, ready?
Okay. So they go through the different technologies between the 90s, when Chris Pratt grew up, and the, Millie Bobby Brown, who comes from that show, that other Netflix show. She's one of their big, they keep on putting shit out with her as the star. And the movie, let me get to this other photo here. So there's a scene in the movie, one of my viewers sent me this on Instagram. And this is a homeless person with a VR set. And there's a scene in the movie where this movie's about trans, what is it called? Not transpersonal, whatever, it'll come back to me. I have a whole folder about it. I got a bunch of pictures I'll put up when I start doing the voiceover. I'll talk about the movie first. But it's about merging with technology. And it's not there's a movie called Transcendent, which is about this, this idea of singularity. And there's various people have pushed this, right? There's billionaires who are pushing this, where your consciousness will be uploaded to a computer or to a bot or something like this. But in the movie, there was a homeless person laying on the sidewalk with his VR set on. And all these people, this is back in the 90s that this technology was available in this world. They try to marry the, once in a while they bring back these retro songs and things, songs from the 90s and music and the whole thing, to merge it with something that happened, the technology that we really don't have now, or we just have now. But there was a robot war, and the robots lost because of this technology, and Millie Bobby Brown's brother shows up as a robot, and he was a genius, and somehow his brain is being used to facilitate all the VR shit and all the stuff that's going on. And so Let me go. I have a brief clip to show you here. It's transhumanism. I have a whole folder and then all these images. I'll play that folder when I do the voiceover on the other side of this scene. And so I'll describe the movie a little bit and what's important about it. I used to cover transhumanism quite a bit. But none of these things matter anymore because it's already, the time to prevent or change things is long past. Even before we were born, perhaps, but certainly the last so many years. There's no avoiding the so-called doomsday. But this is towards the very end of the movie. Spoiler alert, I'm not really going to show you much of the end here, but just watch this. There's victory for the robots, which you can kind of see there. Spoiler alert. And you see the Spaceball guy has the number 322, right? And so this is, it means, they assume 3 balls, 2 strikes, and 2 outs. Okay, so this is a bad movie, not enjoyable. Netflix put some money into this. It's got some, A-list actors in it and, whatever. It's a bad movie. I like these science fiction movies. I always say you might as well, when you're making a movie, you might as well have lasers and shit. Like if you could do that. But, it's kind of my favorite genre and, but it's not often good movies don't come out of science fiction, right? For a variety of reasons. Because the science fiction part takes over from the plot and the acting, the development of a story. And this movie has reminiscence, and I'm talking about I've been talking about lately, this nostalgia that I and other people are going through. It's like our lives are passing before our eyes. And, I don't mind a throwback movie in these things. And, like a different alternate universe type of situation where a technology was given and it altered the course of humanity. In this case, it's robots and transhumanism, and transhumanism is merging with you're merging a person's mind or brain with technology, and they could live eternally. Their mind and their thought patterns, and uploading your brain and your mind to a computer or a robot or an android. These various goals that they have, technologies they're working on. The problem with that is it isn't your soul. The essence of your soul exists in your heart. They can't upload your heart. Your brain isn't your life. Your brain isn't your existence. Your brain is a tool of your existence. It's your consciousness in which you interpret and interact with the world. But it might as well be just an organ like your senses, a sensory organ, where your perception comes. And, there's a field for your mind that's created by your subtle bodies. And I could get into all that. I'm not going to get into that here. But it's not your existence. And so I talked about this extensively in my videos. I covered robots and transhumanism and all this stuff. And, with these movies with science fiction, oftentimes they're vehicles for the truth. And so my wife and I watched this movie Capricorn 1, which one of my viewers recommended, or whatever, Capricorn something or other. I think it's Capricorn 1. It's available for free on Peacock for people who have Peacock. We were just to watch The Traitors season 3, which was one of the best reality shows. The Traitors is a great show because it is how the power system works. And it plays out in these reality, these traitors have more power than the so-called faithfuls. And you can see how the power affects them. You can see how, the power affects everybody else. They can murder people privately, and then they banish people collectively. And so it's a game that was based on a Russian, some Russian kid, a student, who wanted to create a game that would show the power dynamics in these countries. And he was a political activist, and it was called, I think it was Wolves and Villagers or something like that. It was originally this game, and now they've made it into this show. But we watched Capricorn 1. One of my viewers pointed out, I remembered seeing previews for it, and possibly I saw the movie when I was a kid. I couldn't remember. But it's about how they faked a Mars landing. And it's kind of a shitty movie in some ways, and it's kind of dated and was interesting. It's a little bit entertaining. I hadn't seen it before. I don't think I saw it before. But there's an actor who you'll recognize there's 3 astronauts. One of them's O.J. Simpson, and he's a horrible actor, and his expressions are great. Like, we were really focused on O.J. Like, O.J. tried to make it as an actor, and he just, he wasn't gifted as an actor as much as he was as a football player and a murderer. But, and a Kardashian promoter. And OJ there was a time of OJ. Like, there was a time where OJ was Trump. It didn't last as long, but OJ was the focal point for like 3 years. And we live in the age of Trump. But what was interesting about this, it was in 1977. And it's very specific that they were faking this Mars landing for all the reasons that they would fake the moon landing. And the moon landing happened in 1969. And so 8 years later, they put out a movie. These movies, they would write a script, and then the script would have to get funded, and then they would have to, make the movie, and it could take up to 2 years. Like, some of these projects are going on for a long period of time before they actually shoot the movie. It might take up to 3 to 5 years to make a movie. I just looked it up, and the script was written in 1972. So 3 years after the moon landing, they write a script where they have built a soundstage and pretend to go to Mars. And there's all these implications and things, and I won't give away the plot of the movie, so it's just for people they feel like watching it. But it was 3 years after the moon landing, and Hollywood was already producing a movie about faking a Mars landing, right? And it very much looked kind of like the moon landing faking that we've seen in other movies. And so you understand this, like, a lot of these movies, especially these science fiction movies, predict things that or tell you a story of things that are already happening. And one of those things is the second 3, there's 3 separate trilogies of the Star Wars story, and the first 3 trilogies, which were a prequel, show you how they grab power. The people grab power in terms of the empire was created. The guy built a clone army. The guy was running he wormed his way into being the guy in charge of the chancellor, in charge of the Congress or whatever it was, their democracy, their government. The guy who was a Sith Lord. And, he created Darth Vader, all these things that he did. And the creation of these things and Darth Vader going to the dark side. And, these movies are hard to get through because they're, shitty movies, but the last one is the best of all of the 9 movies. Of course, the last 3 are horrific, but, it demonstrates how this stuff happens. And they show you these things all the time. And how this has to do with Trump, I just turned on the news, I ate lunch, and I was watching stuff about them being outraged about Trump. One thing was one network was reporting on the evoking this law, this enemies, whatever wartime policy towards enemies from this 1700s or 19, whatever it was, right? This 17, whatever it was. And then this other thing that he's doing where he's, bombing Yemen. And, the Democrats are hemming and hawing a little bit, but they're letting him do it. And I think because, one, they've been told to let him do it because of the controllers. And 2, they know that in 4 years, they're going to have all these powers. And so when you have liberals who now have the power to lock you up in a FEMA camp based in Trump, getting rid of posse comitatus and these other things, invoking martial law and some of these other policies. When Bush started to do all those, started to write these presidential orders, whatever those things that they call, right? Executive orders. They first hemmed and hawed about it, then Obama started doing the same thing. And if you look at the amount of executive orders that have gone up since Bush, and this was something Dick Cheney figured out, that they could bypass a lot of the bullshit in terms of the checks and balances by doing executive orders. And, the Democrats were like, oh, don't do that. It's horrible. And then when they had Obama in there, they started doing it. And then Trump did it, and then Biden did it. So I looked it up, and George W. Bush didn't have that many of an increase, but his were more substantial. I looked through it historically. In the beginning, they used, George Washington did like 8, and there was some that did 1 or 2. And then, executive branch was supposed to be kept weak. And then over time, they grabbed more and more power and did more of these executive orders. But the ones of substance that George W. Bush did, and some of these things were very, they were, it depends on what the executive orders do as well as the amount of them. And there's been an increase of the bypassing the other branches of government in recent years. And the Democrats know they're going to have all this power, or the powers that be know that when this shifts away from Trump, and you might think Trump's going to be there for you, and he's not. But even if he doesn't attack you directly and your group of people, because you're his people, the next group of people will do that. And we've seen this over and over again. You got to understand that all these things, when they repeal your rights, it doesn't have to be, it's just like when they build nuclear bombs. The current administration might not use them, which they did in Japan, but who will use them in the future, right? Like there'll be a Donald Trump or a senile Joe Biden, or God knows who the next president's going to be, or some foreign country where they use them. It just takes one insane motherfucker or twisted motherfucker to begin a nuclear war. And so this is what you're playing with Donald Trump. That's why it's better to have people who don't stir the boat. No, don't rock the boat, right? Stir the boat. People who don't rock the boat. But Trump is rocking the shit out of the boat, and everything that he does, if he doesn't abuse it, somebody else will. Anyways, let's wrap this video up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount. Definitely points to the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.